Good morning. Hope all of you are well. Today we're learning Maseches Taanis Daf Daled. We're starting on the second line of Daf Daled with a couple of quick agaritas, and then we'll get back into more analysis of the Mishnah of the beginning of the perek toward the bottom of the page. Daf Daled Amid Beis line 2. Omar Rava. Rava says, "Hay tzura me rabbanan." When you have a young rabbi, dummy, he's similar to lepartzida, a seed, the tusekala that's underneath the mud, the kevan, the navat. Once it begins to sprout, it continues to sprout, which is a very beautiful idea. If you see that there is a Torah scholar who gets angry, yes, that makes sense, because it is his learning of Torah that caused him to be angry. What does that mean? Wouldn't you assume that it would refine you and make you into a better person? Take a look at a gorgeous Rashi. Rashi's just to the right, 12 lines down or so. What happens when a person learns Torah? He has a wider heart. He has the capacity to take in more. Mitoch Torah, so because of his learning, and therefore umeisim lelibo, and he can bring into his heart yoser mishar bnei adam, more than other people. The kamash malan dechayavan ladunu lekavschus, and others should be more willing to judge a Torah scholar because the Torah sensitized him more to other people's problem. He gets angry on their behalf. That is what the Gemara is referring to. And how do we know from a text proof, from a verse, that this anger makes sense? Shene'emar, line 6 of the Gemara. Halo kod vari ka'ishnu mashem. My words are like fire, obviously representative of anger. V'amar Ravashi, kol talmid chacham she'enu kasha kebarzel. Any talmid chacham who's not as hard as iron, as metal, eino talmid chacham. He is not considered to be. He's not considered to be a talmid chacham. Shene'emar, and a proof in the pasuk is uchepati shifot tzeitzela, that the Torah scholars compared to a block of metal of some kind. Amar le Rabbi Abba the Rav Ashi Atun, you over there mehasam mas nisula. You learn the pasuk from over there in Eretz Yisrael. Anan, over here us in Bavel mehacha mas nisanla. We learn the same idea about the metal, that a Torah scholar should be a kaptan. He should be very strict and very strong. Where he learns that mas nisanla from a different pasuk. D'chsiv Eretz asher avoneha barzel, a land in which its stones are made of barzel, are made of metal. Al tikri avaneha ella boneha, a play on words from avaneha to boneha, the builders. And we know, of course, that the builders are Torah scholars. Says the Gemara, Amar Ravina. Ravina says, Afilu hachi mi boile leinish lemelav nafshe benichusa. This is such an important point. Yeah, it may be that the Torah does make your heart more sensitive, and it may make you more emotional and more of a balkas. However, it is your burden, it is your obligation. Lemelaf nafshe benichusa. Lemelaf means to learn, to train yourself to be benachas. Not so pashut, but that is our obligation. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, v'aser kaas milibcha v'gomer, that one is obligated to remove anger from one's heart. End of agadata number 1. Here's agadata number 2. We're 12 lines down, quarter of the way down, a little bit more than 12 lines. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amar Rav Yonasan. Shlosha shalu shelo kehogen, l'shnaim heshivu kehogen, le'echad heshivu shelo kehogen. There were 3 people who asked things that they shouldn't have asked. 2 of them got good responses, and 1 of them didn't get a good response. Ve'eluhein, here is what is going on. Who are the 3 people? Eliezer Eved Abraham, who we know was sent to find a wife for Yitzchak. That was Eliezer. Shaul ben Kish. Shaul was the king who, when he and David had it out. Yiftach Hagiladi. Yiftach was one of the Shoftim, as is discussed in the Nevi'im. And what were each of the 3 stories? Eliezer Eved Avraham, Tichsiv, the pasuk writes, what did he ask for? We know that he was looking for a simon. When he was looking for a wife for Yitzchak, whoever would be the girl who would say Hatina Chadech, let me. I would ask her to pour the pitcher, to give me some drink, to do some chesed, and we know she did even more than that. She also fed the camels. Fine. So he asked a kasha on Avram, which is not appropriate. That's shelo kehogen. Says the Gemara, Yachal, you might have thought afilu chigeres afilu suma. What if this girl who's a balas chesed? What if she's a chigeres? What if she's a lame? She's missing a limb, she's less attractive in that way. Afilusuma, maybe she's even blind. That's going to be kehogan for Yitzchak. That's not right. So it says the Gemara, shivu kehogan. He got a good response, even though his question shouldn't have been asked. V'niz damno lo Rivka, and Rivka was beautiful, and Rivka was not a chigeris, and she was not a suma. So that's story number one, where the question shouldn't have been asked, but the answer was good. Here's question two, halfway down. Shaul ben Kish the king, the one who is able to beat him, referring to Goliath, the famous story of David and Goliath, but we don't know the David piece yet. Before the David piece, he said to whoever, he said to the people, anyone who's able to destroy my enemy Goliath, I will make them Yashra and I'll make them rich. Osher Gadol, they'll be loaded. Vezbito Yiteno, and his daughter, Shaul's daughter is Michal, and he'll give his daughter to this person. So Yocho, Afilu Eved, Afilu Mamzer, it's a halachic issue. You can't just say that. What if the person who ends up killing Goliath is a person that she's not allowed to marry? She can't marry a mamzer. A mamzer can only marry a mamzer. That's not. There's no other options. Or a shtuki, a suffix mamzer. So that's not such a simple thing. So she's not.
Child wasn't Jewish. So
What?
Goliath's child wasn't Jewish. So
No, not Goliath's child. Whoever kills Shaul's child, whoever kills Goliath will marry Shaul's daughter.
Okay.
So that was a problem, because what if the person who killed Goliath was an Eved? Well, you're not allowed to marry unless you're an Eved. And what if they're a mamzer? It's interesting. The Gemara gives these examples. Why didn't they say goy? There are thousands of examples. There are dozens of examples of people who she's not allowed to marry. Okay, not for now. Says the Gemara, Heshivu kehogen v'nizdamen lo David. The story all worked out, even though the question shouldn't have been asked, even though Shaul shouldn't have done that. It wasn't the right way to marry off his daughter, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated that it should be David. Fine, and David married Michal. Third story, Yiftach Hagilati, he was a shofet, one of the judges in the book of Shoftim. Dichsiv, the pasuk writes, he was trying to battle with the nation of Ammon, and he made a deal with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He said, that he would sacrifice whoever would leave the doors of his house first, anticipating that it would be one of his animals. And it ended up being his daughter. But what happened before that? Maybe that which would come out of his house would be an animal that's not kosher, a dog, whatever it may be. And Heshilu Shelo Kahogan, the story did not work out the right way. Nizdamna lo bito, and his daughter walked out. First, Machlokes and the Rishonim and the Meforshim, what actually took place with his daughter. But now we're going to be talking about human sacrifice. And if ever anybody says, well, I'm sure the Jews always did human sacrifice, you just don't know about it, these psukim will show you that that was never part of our heritage. 2/3 of the way down. There's no one who can solve this problem. Go get Hataras Nadarim. Why didn't Yiftach go get Hataras Nadarim? You made a neder that the first one that should come out of your house, you're going to sacrifice. You see now that it's your daughter. Go get, that's what the Rashi says on the right side here. Rashi, Dibur HaMaschil, V'hainu da'amar lehu navi, Dibur HaMaschil, V'hainu da'amar lehu navi. And it says at the end of that Rashi, Shelo Ratza, Yiftach lelech etzlo. He didn't want to go to Pinchas. V'hulo ratza lavo etzel Yiftach. And they were lazy. Go get Hataras Nadarim and don't kill your daughter. And that's pasuk number one. Uchsi, back in the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down. Uchsi asher lo tzivesi lo dibarti lo alsa alivi. This pasuk makes three references, none of which are evident from the pasuk itself. So let's parse out the pasuk and understand it. Asher lo tzivesi zebeno shel Mesha melech Moab. This is a story about Mesha, who was the king of Moab. Shneamar, the pasuk says, he took his oldest child, Asher Yimloch Tachtav, who was going to take over for him after he gave up the monarchy. And he sacrificed his child. That's not Ratzon Hashem. We don't do human sacrifice. What is Velo Dibarti? That's the story of Yiftach. The story of Yiftach and his daughter. Again, we don't do human sacrifice. And the third story, V'alo also Alibi, it never crossed my mind, referring to Yitzchak ben Avraham, the famed story of the Akedas Yitzchak. That even when the Torah says in Sefer Breshis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avram, he says to Avram, you need to shech Yitzchak aleul ola. He never intended for that to happen. We know how the story played out. Vayomer Avram, vayomer hineni. And the story stops in the tracks. It was a test of Avram's faith, one of the 10 tests of Avram's faith, but nothing more than that. End of story. We do not believe in human sacrifice. Those were the 3 questions and 3 answers that the Gemara says, 2 of which were answered well and 1 was not. Amar Reb Brachia, let's add a little bit of things that are included here, and we'll see in a moment why it is that this Gemara is here, because as of now, this Gemara seems to have nothing to do with our discussion at all. Seems to be a total cutout belonging elsewhere. Says the Gemara about 3/4 of the way down, 15 lines or so from the bottom. Amar Reb Brachia, Of Knesset Yisrael, Shala Shalo Kehogan, the Jews asked for something that they shouldn't have asked for. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Heshiva Kehogan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a better response than their question deserved. Shene'emar v'nei da'ah nir defala dases Hashem. We want to know and we want to chase after, to pursue the knowledge of Hashem. Kishachar nachon motzeo, like the sun comes out, v'yavo kegeshem lanu. We want it to come out like the rains, implying that the rains are always good. We know that the rains are not always good. We've already seen that there's a time that it's a siman klala. That's why this Gemara is here, because of this additional piece of the questions that were asked Shelo Kehogan. Omar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says back to the Jews, Biti, my daughter, Ad shoeles davar, you're requesting something, shepamim misbakesh, sometimes it's desirable, upamim eino misbakesh, and sometimes it's not desirable. Avalani, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu back to the Jews, I'll always be desirable to you. Shne'emar, as the pasuk says, Derech Mashal ehyeh ketal l'Yisrael, I'll be like the dew. What did we say yesterday in Daf Yomi? That the tal is never bad. That's always good and it's always present. Wonderful. So Geshem is not always present, so the Jews asked the wrong way. Tal is always wonderful, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded in kind. V'od sheila, first of the long lines on Dalet and Aleph, 8 lines from the bottom, a little bit less. V'od sheila shelo kehogen, another question that was asked that shouldn't have been. Amra lefanav, the Jewish people said in the feminine. Amra, she said to him, Ribono shel simeni kachosam al libecha kachosam al zeroecha. Put me like a seal on your heart, like a seal on your arm. So what is that? What?
Sounds like filling.
I would have thought also, but not what the Gemara says. Amar Leah Kodesh Baruch Hu. Actually, exactly what I thought when I was learning this, was waiting for that to happen. That's not what the Gemara says. Amar Leah Kodesh Baruch Hu. Kodesh Baruch Hu says back to Klal Yisrael, Biti, my daughter. I can't see your heart always when you're dressed. I can't see you. So if you want there to be a siman on your heart, I can't see that always. Al zroecha, that you have to cover your arms. Sometimes people dress with their arms covered, certainly above the elbow. We have halachas like that. Sometimes some of the posts can write by men too, that when one is davening, they should try and cover their elbows. I've seen that written before somewhere. Anyways, that was their request. Avalani, says the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom. I'm always going to have you visible. I'm going to engrave you on my hand. Okay, I don't know what that means. Some of the Meforshim say that this is actually referencing one of the 4 legs of the Kisei HaKavod. We learned about this a little bit ago when we were discussing the sugya in Maseches Rosh Hashanah about what it is that you're allowed to draw. Remember, we learned this sugya: can you draw the moon? Can you draw the stars? Obviously, you can't make a pesel, but so one of the things one of the shitas that we saw in the Gemara is that you can't draw all 4 of the images that were on the legs of the Kisei HaKavod. One of those images is this, Al Kapayim Chakosicha, that maybe we're talking about the image of man, of the human, that is etched into, quote unquote, and kaviyachol, because I don't know what this means, on the footstool of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the legs of the Kisei HaKavod. All right, let's get back into an analysis of our Mishnah. All of this was brought because of the incorrect request of the Jews to ask for rain. Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, we had a cryptic line in our Mishnah that said, Ein shoalen es hageshamim. That wasn't how our Mishnah started. Our Mishnah started about maskirin. So what's shoalen? So that's a discussion. Savruha. Some people thought that when they looked at our Mishnah that she'ela v'hazkara chada milsahi, that she'ela, asking for, namely, v'sein talamater libracha. She'ela is code word for v'sein talamater libracha. And hazkara, which is code word for mashiva rachmer geshem. Some thought chada milsahi. They're all really one thing. And if that were to be true, Mantana, who then would be the author of our Mishnah? Amar Rava, the author of our Mishnah, would then be Rabbi Yoshuahi. Amar Rava, Rabbi Yoshuahi, da Amar Mishas Hanachaso. When did Rabbi Yoshua say that we're obligated to start saying Mashi V'Rach Merid Geshem? That's Mishas Hanachaso, from the time that you stop using the lulav and esrog at the end of the holiday by Shmini Atzeres, all the way at the end, and that's closer to the rain season. And maybe, according to Rabbi Yoshua, and according to the way that he would understand this Mishnah, one would therefore be obligated to say the same Talmud Mater Livracha and to say Mashi V'Rach Merid Geshem, the She'ela and Hazkara, at the end of the Chag. So maybe we should say it's only him. Nope. Rabbi Eliezer. We could even say it's Rabbi Eliezer. How could we say it's Rabbi Eliezer? We learned in our Mishnah that Rabbi Eliezer holds that we start with Mashi V'Rach at the beginning of the Chag. We start at the beginning, says the Gemara, because She'ela L'chud Be'azkara L'chud. You wanted to say that the timing of the She'ela, of the V'sein Talamater Livracha, and the Hazkara of the Mashi V'Rach Merid Geshem were at the same time. They're not. Different times. And when the Mishnah said shoalin, as we were ein shoalin asag shamim, that's not referring to the timing of when we say v'sein talamato libracha as it relates to Mashiv v'rach Geshem. V'ika de amre, some say that the way that these few lines were written is actually written a little differently with the same conclusions. Lema, top of Dalet Amud Beis. Maybe we should say that it's Rabbi Yoshua, that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yoshua, Amar Mishas Hanachaso, Amar Rava, Afilu Tema Rabbi Eliezer. We could even say it the other way, that it's even Rabbi Eliezer, She'ela Lechud Ve'azkara Lechud, two different versions of the same explanation of our Mishnah. And the Gemara concludes that this line of Ein Shoalin could be either like Rabbi Yoshua or even like Rabbi Eliezer. That brings us to the end of our Mishnah. So the Gemara here on the third line of Dalet Amud Beis quotes the end of our Mishnah that says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer ha'over lifnei ateva. So here it's actually helpful if you look back in the Mishnah on Daf Beis Amud Beis, not too far back. The Mishnah on Beis Amud Beis, 5 lines before the end of the Mishnah said that Rabbi Yehuda says, ha'over lifnei ateva b'yom tov ha'acharon shel chag. A person's going to walk up to the bima. He's going to walk up to the amud at the end of the holiday. Ha'achron mazkir, harishon eno mazkir. So then the Baal Musaf will say Mashiv Ruach Moed Geshem on Sukkot on Yantif, on the last day of Yantif, but the Baal Shachris won't. And then when do we stop saying Mashiv Ruach? B'Yom Tov Harishon Shel Pesach, on the first day of Pesach, Harishon Mazkir. Then the Baal Shachris will still say Mashiv Ruach Moed Geshem, but Ha'acharon Eno Mazkir. He will not say Mashiv Ruach. So that's what we said, that the Mashiv Ruach goes from Musaf of the last day of Sukkot to Shachris of the first day of Pesach. So now let's analyze that, because says the Gemara 4 lines down, or in Minhu, we seem to have a source in the Tanaim that doesn't agree with our Mishnah. Ad Masai Shoalin Asageshamim. Until when is a person Shoel Asageshamim? What did we say about the language of Shoalin? That Shoalin is a reference to the same Talamatar Livracha, not Mashiv Ruach. But the Gemara presents this as a challenge. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, continuing this brisa, to answer the question of until when are we Shoalin, Rabbi Yehuda says, Ad sheya'avor ha-Pesach, until Pesach ends. What did Rabbi Yehuda say in our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah that we stop saying Mashiv HaRuach HaMoed HaGeshem by Shachris on the first day of Pesach. However, here it seems to say that he's Shoalin Asageshamim Ad sheya'avor ha-Pesach, stira within Rabbi Yehuda. Let's finish out the Mishnah, the brisa. Yeah, the brisa. Reb Meir Omer Ad sheya'avor Nisan. Now we don't have to worry about his shita, because we're concerned about Rabbi Yehuda, who contradicts himself. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chizda lo kasha. Pay attention. Kan lishol, kan lahazkir. That's not a stira. The Mishnah that we had on Daf Beis Amud Aleph at the open of the parak was not talking about she'ela, about the Saint Talamata Livracha. It was talking about Hazkara, which is Mashiv HaRuach HaMoed HaGeshem. And this brisa that we have quoted here on the top of Dalet Amud Beis is only talking about she'ela and not Hazkara. It's apples and oranges. No conflict at all. So Mishal Sha'il Va'azil, we'll go and we'll ask longer until Pesach is over. That's the brisa here, that Mishal Sha'il Va'azil, that one can continue to be Shoel, to say the same Talumatar through the end of Pesach, but that's not a stira to our Mishnah, which says that we stop Mashiv HaRuach HaMoed HaGeshem on the first day. There are different things. Mashiv HaRuach HaMoed HaGeshem stops on the first day of Pesach. But saying the same Talamata Livracha, you say throughout Chol HaMoed, of course, not on Yantif, we'll discuss that shortly. That's fine. But lehazkir leyom tov harishon pasik, when it comes to saying Mashiv HaRuach HaMoed HaGeshem, that stops on the first day of Pesach. Says the Gemara Amar Ula. Ha de Rav Chizda, that line that Rav Chizda said, the answer that he just gave, that the Mishnah on Daf Beis is talking about Hazkara, about Mashiv HaRuach HaMoed HaGeshem, and the brisa here in Daf Dalet is talking about She'ela. He says about Rav Chizda Shita, Kashya, it's difficult to me, Kechometz leshinayim, like vinegar to your teeth, Uche'ashan le'einayim, and like smoke to your eyes. That's quite powerful imagery. Uma b'makom she'eno shoel mazkir. What is this weird scenario where on Yom Tov you're not shoel but you're mazkir, because you don't say the Barech Aleinu bracha, you don't say the same Talamata Livracha on Yom Tov. So we're not saying the she'ela, but you're still mazkir. You still say Mashiv HaRuach, and at the same time b'makom she'shoel eno din she'yehei mazkir. Shouldn't it also be the case that throughout Chol HaMoed on Pesach, where you're still being shoel, but you stopped being mazkir on the first days? So the scenario that Rav Chisda views, that Ula views as a paradox within Rav Chisda, is Chol HaMoed Pesach. What's the case there? The case on Chol HaMoed Pesach is now we're saying a regular weekday Shemona Esrei. So we're saying Barech Aleinu. Great. We're saying Barech Aleinu, which is the She'ela. We're not even going to be Mazkir and say Mashiv Aruch Moed Geshem. He can't fathom such a thing, even though that's how we paskin. He can't fathom it. So therefore, it says the Gemara, Ela Amar Ula, this is the second answer to the contradiction between our Mishnah on Beis Amud Aleph and the Brisa here on Daf Daled Amud Beis. Ela Amar Ula, really it's Trei Tanoe Aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. It's two different ways, two different Talmidim as to how we need to understand Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah was written like one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Yehuda, and the Brisa on Daf Daled Amud Beis was written like another version of them. Third answer, Rav Yosef Amar. He gives an answer. What does the Brisa on Daf Daled Amud Beis mean when it says "My Achi Yavor HaPesach"? What does it mean when it says Achi Yavor HaPesach? And the Gemara puts a square peg in a round hole and says, Ad Sheyavor HaPesach doesn't mean all of Pesach. It means Ad Sheyavor Shliach Tzibur Rishon Ayor B'Yom Tov Rishon Shal Pesach. It just means until the guy who's davening Shachris finishes. Namely, they're saying the same thing, even though the language is so difficult to fit in like that. Ad Sheyavor HaPesach, just translate the words until Passover completes. But that's not. But you're put again a square peg round hole. You're saying that pshat in that brisa is when the Baal Shachris finishes on day one. Okay. It's a dachawi answer, very difficult answer, but that's what Rav Yosef says. First long line, Daf Daled Amud Beis, 1/3 of the way down. Amar le Abaye, she'ela b'yom tov mi'ika. Can it be the case that we have she'ela, that we have a case of she'ela on Yom Tov? How do you have such a case? Because remember, what did the Mishnah say? What did the Brisa say that we quoted? We said Shoal and Asagashamim until when? Until the first day of Pesach. What do you mean Shoal and Asagashamim? Shoal means the saying Talamat Livracha. On Yontiv, we don't say the same Talamat Livracha because that's not part of Shemona Esrei. That's only in the Bracha Barech Aleinu, only in the weekday. So says the Gemara, Amar Le, Rabbi Yosef responds, yeah, we do. During the drasha, says the Gemara, Shol Meturgaman. The Meturgaman, the person who was the mouthpiece for the Rebbe, for the Amora, he would say out loud, by the way, the same Talamat Livracha. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? That's a private tefillah. You're saying that publicly for everybody who says that that's what everyone needed. So therefore, we reject Rav Yosef. We therefore go back to the Shita of Ula, who said that really all that we're talking about is these two versions of Rabbi Yehuda are different versions of two of his Talmidim. Good. Answer number 4 to this stira between our Mishnah on Daf Beis Amud Aleph and this Brisa on Daf Daled Amud Beis. Rabba Amar Mayat Sheyavor HaPesach. What did the Brisa on Daf Daled Amud Beis mean when it said that Ein Shoal in His Hagashamim? We're not going to be Shoal until Pesach. What does that mean? Ad Sheyavor Zman Shchitas HaPesach. Totally different time frame. What we're talking about is saying the same Talamat Livracha until Yud Daled Nisan, after Shachris, right? Because what was the Zman of Pesach? Chatzos on that day of the 14th of Nisan of Erev Pesach. Ukitchilaso kain sofo. Like we started saying it, so too we will end saying it. What does that mean? Matchilaso, just like when we start saying Mashiv Ruach, we are Mazkir Afal Pi She'eno Shoel, that when we start on the last day of Sukkot, we say we're Mazkir, we say Mashiv Ruach, but we're Eno Shoel. And we don't say the same Talamat Livracha. Afsofo, the same is true by Pesach. We're Mazkir. We say Mashiv Aruch Amorid Geshem Afal Pi She'eno Shoel, that we stop saying the She'ela, we stop saying the same Talamat Livracha by the Korban Pesach. Amar Le Abaye, hang on one second, halfway down Daf Daled Amud Beis, we're going to be going to the Mishnah on the top of Hey Amud Aleph. Amar Le Abaye, Bishtamat Chilaso Mazkir. I understand in the beginning you're going to be Mazkir even though you're not Shoel. That I understand. Okay, Hazkara Nami Ritsui She'elahi. Big, important hashkafa, the way to look at things. Even just talking about giving the compliment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Mashiv Baruch Moed Geshem, that's also a Ritsui. That also shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want you to give me the rain, and you're the capable one of doing so. So fine, I got it. The Hazkara is like a precursor to the She'ela. I'm saying how awesome you are, and then I'm going to say the same Talamat Livracha. However, says the Gemara, that doesn't really play out. I understand the first part by Sukkot, but what I don't understand is by Pesach. Elasofo, my Ritsui She'ela Ika. What Ritsui She'ela is there? You're going to be saying Mashiv Haruach Moed Geshem on that first day of Pesach. but you stopped saying the she'ela. Well, it's all backwards. You shouldn't be saying the Haskara without the she'ela. Ella says the Gemara machvarta kideula, and with this we seem to conclude our understanding of the stira of our Mishnah and this brisa, the stira within Rabbi Yehuda. This is our fourth answer, and the Gemara only liked answer number 2, which was the answer of Ula, that Shita number 1 of Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah was like one Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda, and Shita number 2 of Rabbi Yehuda in the brisa on the top of Daf Daled Amud Beis was another student. Fine. We're a little bit more than halfway down, 2/3 of the way down, Daf Daled Amud Beis, one last sugya. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan, the Amora, paskins like Rabbi Yehuda, that what? That we start saying Mashiv Ruach at the end of Sukkot by Musaf, and we stop saying it by Shachris on Pesach. Those are the bookends of Mashiv Ruach. Says the Gemara, Omar le Reb Zer le Rabasi, Umi Amar Rav Yochanan hachi. Did Rav Yochanan really say such a thing? The Mishnah writes, on the 3rd of Mar Cheshvan, the 3rd day of the month of Cheshvan, that's when we're Shoal and Asag Shamim. Rabban Gamliel, Omar B'Shvi Shebo. And Rabban Gamliel says, nope, it's not the 3rd, it's the 7th of Cheshvan. The Omar Rebbe Lazar halacha Rabban Gamliel. And Rebbe Lazar, the Amora, says that we paskin like Rabban Gamliel. So says the Gemara, how could Rabbi Yochanan say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that we use the bookends of the end of Sukkot and the beginning of Pesach for Mashiv Ruach? Hooray! We see the sheet of Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Lazar paskins like him. Amar Le, says the Gemara, the most obvious answer ever. These two Amoraim don't have to agree with each other. Rabbi Yochanan can hold like who he wants to hold like, and Rabbi Lazar can do whatever he wants. These are grown men who are Talmidei Chachamim. Amar Le, answer number 1, Gavra agavra karamis. You're pitting Rabbi Yochanan against Rabbi Lazar. What does that have to do with anything? They can pass in like whoever they want. Anybody say my another answer is lokasha. Kan lisho, kan lahaskir. I could even come up with an answer. I don't need to, but I could even come up with an answer that no big deal. One of them is talking about she'ela. One of them is talking about saying the same talamatza livracha. The other is talking about being mazkir, about Mashiv Baruch Murda Geshem. Says the Gemara, V'amar Rav Yochanan, B'makom sheshoel mazkir. Rav Yochanan says, nope. We know Rav Yochanan himself says that in a place where you start saying she'ela, you start being mazkir, that we align the timing of a Saint Talamata Livracha with mazkir. And if that's true, it can't answer the question between Rav Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar, because Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't accept the answer. So therefore, says the Gemara, Hahu laf saka itmar. The line of Rabbi Yochanan, who says that there is an alignment of she'ela and hazkara, of a Saint Talamat Livrach and Mashiv Baruch, that's only in regards to the stopping time, but not in regards to the starting time. So the previous answer would hold up. But still, we have another question. V'amar Rav Yochanan, hischil lehazkir maschil lishol. Pasak milishol, posek milahaskir. In other words, we align everything, the starting point and the ending point. And if Rabbi Yochanan was of the opinion that the same Talamat Livrach and Mashiv Baruch start and end on the same day, then the previous answer that we gave of Kan Lishol, that the different opinions of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar, where one was talking about She'ela, one was talking about Askara, it's no longer a good answer. Ela Lokasha, don't worry. These two differing opinions of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lazar can be answered in another way. Ela Lokasha Halan and Halahu. One is talking about those of us here in Bavel and Chutz La'aretz. And Halahu, this one's talking about those in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan lived in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Lazar lived in Bavel. Good. So says the Gemara, Maishna l'didan di Islan peri b'dabra. Why is it that by us we're talking about this? We have fruits that are out. We don't want it to rain right now. We want to push things off. L'didu nami islu ole regalim. Over there, they've got Jews who they don't want them to get sopping wet when they're walking home from Shalosh Regalim. Wait a little bit. Wait a little bit like Rabban Gamliel till the 7th of Cheshvan. Beautiful, you get a couple weeks. So says the Gemara, Kik Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Shein Beis HaMikdash Kaim. What was Rabbi Yochanan talking about when he said that the rain should start earlier? That's only talking about once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, there was no longer, unfortunately, a mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel. We didn't have to wait for the Jews to walk home until the 7th of Cheshvan. There's no Beis HaMikdash, there's no Aliyah L'Regel. Says the Gemara, now that we've come to this answer about the Beis HaMikdash, then we don't need to say that this is true in Bavel and this is true in Eretz Yisrael. No, Hava Haladidu. Everything applies only in Eretz Yisrael. The Lokasha. Kam bizman shebeis HaMikdash kayim. The sheet of Rabbi Elazar, who holds that it's the 7th of the Mar Cheshvan. That's what he paskined when there was a Beis HaMikdash. He gave them time from the 21st, 22nd day of Tishrei to get home, Tishrei Cheshvan, to get home to the 7th. They gave him a couple of weeks to walk home. And Kan Bizman She'ein Beis HaMikdash Kaim, the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan was right away at the end of the Chag, we start saying Mashiv Aruach. We don't have to worry about them getting home because there is no Beis Hamikdash, unfortunately. Says the Gemara, brilliant question. Back in the day when they kept 2 days purely out of Sveika de Yoma, the Anan de Islan Treyome, Hechi Avdina. Wait a second. If we hold that the last day of Yontif is really 2 days because of Sveika de Yoma, when do we say Mashiv Aruach? If really it's supposed to be the 7th day of the holiday and not the 8th, then I need to say Mashiv Aruach on the 7th day. And if there's a Sveika de Yoma and it's really not the 7th, then I should be saying it on the 8th. What should I do? Says the Gemara, the first answer is very strange. We'll see that Rav came back from this walking the plank and going out on a difficult answer here. Amar Rav, Maschil b'musafin. He says, no problem. On the last day of Yontif, you're going to say Mashiv Aruach Mir Geshem in Musaf. Then uposek, you stop b'mincha arbis v'shachris. Then you don't say it for the tefillas that follow for mincha arbis and shachris, even though mincha is the same day as Musaf. Doesn't matter. The choser b'musaf, and the next day by Musaf you say it again. Says the Gemara, Amar lahu Shmuel, Poku v'imru leila Abba. Can you please go tell Rav? Abba is a name for Rav. Can you please go tell him? Achar she'asisu kodesh taseu chol. You already sanctified the day by saying Mashiv Aruach Mir Geshem on the 7th day. Now that it's Yom Tov Sheni, you're going to go back and say Mori Datal. No, that doesn't make any sense. Elamar Shmuel, I completely disagree with Rav. Knocked him out of the water. Maschil b'musafin uvim mincha. You have to say Musaf and Mincha. Treat the rest of that day, Musaf and Mincha. All of the rest of the 7th day is treated that way. And then we've completed the day of day 7, b'mashiv Aruach Mir Geshem. And then uposek arbis v'shachris v'chozer maschil b'musaf. And he gives a more creative answer. You're right. You're right that we're going to spend part of the 8th day not saying Mashiv Aruach. That's fine. Uposek arbis v'shachris v'chozer maschil b'musaf. Now Rava Amar on the top of Daf Hamid Aleph, almost at the end, Shachris in 3.5 minutes. Rava Amar kevan shehischel shuveno posek. No, not even like Shmuel. Not even like Shmuel, who at least breaks the day up at Shkia. He says that on the 7th day you say Musaf and Mincha have Mashiv Aruach, and then the next day's Mariv and Shachris don't, and then by Musaf you're back again with Mashiv Aruach. He's no. Once you say Mashiv Aruach, you're done. He says the same thing, that once you start, you can't go back. V'af Rav, even the Shita of Rav, who initially told us the strange Shita, that you only say Mashiv Aruach on day 7 by Musaf, but not even by Mincha, and then only the next day do you come back. V'af Rav Hadar, he changed his mind. How do we know? The Amar Rav Chanan al Amar Rav. Mona esrim ve'echad yom kederach shemona asara yamim merashana yom kippur mamaskil. We count 21 days in total, from the beginning of Rosh Hashanah all the way until the 21st day, and then we start saying Mashiv Aruach Mir Geshem, period. We don't care what's going on, Yom Tov Sheni, not Yom Tov Sheni. And once you start, you don't go back. What is the halacha? That's what we do. Even though it's true, we have an element of Sveika Diyoma, not calendarically. We know that our calendars are right, but Afal Pikein, there was a little bit of a debate. We paskin like everyone, because Rav circled back and was Hadar Bey, that once we say Mashiv Aruach on the first of the 2nd days of Yontiv, we are good to go. Wishing you all a beautiful day. I will, Amir Hashem, I'll upload tomorrow's shiur at some point between now and then, and have a wonderful day.